Good morning, everybody. Today we'll try to understand how sexual reproduction occurs in flowering plants. As we all know, in flowering plants, the process of sexual reproduction is also called double fertilization. It is because two male gametes fuse with two female gametes in this case. So the male gametes and female gametes are born on the structures called gametophytes. Gametophyte means gamete bearing structures. In case of a male plant or a male flower, the gamete bearing structure is the pollen grain, and in case of the female plant or the female flower, the gamete bearing structure is the ovary. That is, in case of male plant, male gametophyte is the pollen grain, and the male gametes are formed inside the pollen grain, that is inside the male gametophyte. Whereas in case of female plants, the female gametophyte is ovary, and the female gametes, that is the egg cell and the central cell, are formed inside the female gametophyte. And the fusion of these two sperm cells with the egg cell and the central cell results in the process which we call double fertilization. This is nothing, this is just an overview of how reproduction takes place in the angiospermous flowering plants. As we can see here, this structure, that is the sporophytic structure of female plant, and this structure is the sporophytic structure of the male plant. This shows the ovary and this shows the anther. These are the four microsporangia which we will be discussing later. This diagram is not to be memorized. It just represents how microspores are formed inside the microsporangia present in the anther lobes, and then male gametes are formed inside the pollen grain, and how the megaspores are formed inside the megasporangium, that is the ovary, and how the two fuse to give rise to zygote. Zygote develops into embryo, embryo into seed. Here we have, I'm just trying to distinguish the two processes. First is sporogenesis and the second is gametogenesis. In the first process, that is sporogenesis, diploid pollen mother cells, in case of male reproductive tissue we are discussing, diploid pollen mother cells or myocytes undergo meiotic divisions in order to give rise to microspores, which are haploid spores. As you can see, meiosis is taking place, that is why the ploidy is being halved. That is, here the pollen mother cells or the myocytes, they were diploid. However, after meiosis, microspore which is formed is haploid. So, in case of female reproductive tissues also, the megaspore mother cell, which is diploid, after meiotic division gives rise to haploid megaspores. So this process in which spores are being generated is called sporogenesis. However, it is not the spore which is participating in the fusion or in the fertilization, it is the gamete. So this microspore will further develop into the gametes. We will see, this is the microspore. Inside this microspore, in case of male reproductive tissue, inside this the final male gametes will be formed, and inside the megaspore which has been formed in sporogenesis, inside that megaspore female gametes will be formed. This is just a normal picture which shows a bisexual flower which carries both the male and the female reproductive organs. You can see anther and filament here, which are the male reproductive organs, and stigma, style and ovary, which are the female reproductive organs. Today we will be focusing mainly on the male reproductive organs. Male reproductive structure of any flowering plant consists of two parts, anther and filament, which together constitute the stamen or the male reproductive system of a flowering plant. As we can see, anther is the terminal bilobed structure. It has two lobes, and filament is the long slender stalk via which this stamen is attached to the petals of the flower. As we can see in this diagram, those filaments attach this stamen part to the petals of the flower. They are holding it. So a typical anther is bilobed, that is, it has two lobes. If you cut the anther from in between, you will see that inside each lobe of anther there are two oval sacs. Each of these sacs are called microsporangia. So each anther lobe is bisporangiate, and a typical anther has 4 sporangia, 2 in each of its lobes, and it is called tetrasporangiate. Okay. Connecting these two anther lobes is a sterile mass of connective tissue present in the center, which is called connective. So it is inside this microsporangia, each of these microsporangia, that pollen grains are formed. So these microsporangia, sporangium is a structure which encloses spores. It is being called microsporangia because it belongs to the male reproductive system. All the spores and gametes formed in case of male reproductive system are smaller as compared to those formed in case of female reproductive system. That is why the sporangia, the gametes, the spores, they are all called microsporangia, microspores, microgametes. So the microsporangia, they are the pollen sacs because they will be enclosing the pollen grains. They will be filled with the pollen grains at maturity. We'll later see how when the anther is mature, this part of anther, this between the two sporangia, it becomes weakened. The rest of the anther walls become fibrous, and it is here that this anther will dehisce. This part of the anther is called stomium, the line of dehiscence, the line that you can see between the two sporangia of the anther lobe. So we'll try to understand how inside the microsporangium. Microsporangium means the structure which is enclosing the male spores. How inside that microsporangium or pollen sac is the pollen grain formed, and then we will see how inside that pollen grain the male gametes are formed and how they reach the female gamete and how the fertilization results. So here we can see in a pollen sac, we will be discussing each of these pollen sacs. So inside each pollen sac we can see there is an outer layer called epidermis, as in case of each and every plant structure we have an epidermis, and the lining which is present below the epidermis is called hypodermis. Epidermis means the upper layer, epi means upper, hypo means lower. So below the epidermis, hypodermis is present. These hypodermals are playing the major role in the formation of the pollen grain. You can see each hypodermal cell differentiates into an archisporial cell. Each hypodermal cell is differentiating into an archisporial cell. Differentiation just means a rearrangement of some structures present inside the cell. So those archisporial cells have been formed. After that, each archisporial cell will divide into an outer primary parietal cell and an inner primary sporogenous cell. Primary parietal cells, parietal means outer. So the outer layer of cells is called primary parietal cells and the lower layer of cells is called primary sporogenous cells. Parietal cells are the outer cells. They will be giving rise to the wall layers of the sporogenous tissue, and they have nothing to do with the formation of spores or with the formation of gametes. It is these primary sporogenous cells. Sporogenous means giving rise to the spores. It is these sporogenous cells which will be giving rise to the sporogenous tissue. So what happens? These primary parietal cells will divide to form the wall layers. The outermost is called endothecium, which is followed by 1 to 3 middle layers, and after the middle layers the innermost is the tapetum, which is the most important layer lining the sporogenous tissue. So this is the sporogenous tissue inside which each of the cell is diploid. As in plant body, in angiospermous plant body, each and every cell is diploid. So like those cells also, this sporogenous tissue is also diploid, and we will be seeing how this diploid sporogenous tissue will give rise to haploid male gametes or haploid spores. It is these wall layers which have been surrounding endothecium, middle layers, tapetum and sporogenous tissue, which we will be discussing. So this is the diagram given in your NCERT book. As we can see in this diagram, Outermost is the epidermis. You can see 4 pollen sacs are there. We are discussing the structure of this pollen sac, for example. Outermost there is epidermis, then there is endothecium, then 1 to 3 middle layers are present, and the innermost wall layer is the tapetum. Inner to the tapetum, sporogenous tissue is present, where whole of the significant activity is taking place, where the spores will be formed, then the pollen grain will be formed. We will see how. So each oval sac shaped structure we know is called microsporangium. Each microsporangium has epidermis, endothecium, middle layers and tapetum, which surround the sporogenous tissue. So the outer 3 wall layers, that is the epidermis, the endothecium and the middle layers, are performing the function of protection, and they help in the dehiscence of the anther to release pollen. What happens actually is, when the pollen grains have been formed, the anther is mature, then these wall layers become fibrous, they stiffen, resulting in the breakage of this point. Okay, this rest of the wall becomes fibrous and it stiffens. Due to stiffening of these portions, anther breaks from this point, which is called stomium, or the line of dehiscence. If you see it in case of anther, in an anther lobe, as these portions, rest of the portions will stiffen, so here, from here the wall will break and a line of dehiscence called stomium is visible from this portion. So the tapetal cells, the rest of wall layers are performing no significant function rather than protection and dehiscence, but the tapetal cells have a special function to perform. The tapetal cells have dense cytoplasm, means they are providing nutrition. They have more than one nuclei. How they will have more than one nuclei? Because nuclear divisions are taking place inside the tapetum, but those nuclear divisions are not followed by cytoplasmic divisions immediately, which results in more than one nuclei present inside the same cell. And they also show polyploidy and increase in DNA contents. Unusual divisions are taking place, nuclear divisions are taking place in the tapetal cell, due to which the ploidy of the cells has increased, the cytoplasm is very dense, and no cell walls are being formed after nuclear divisions. So this tapetum, which is important for the proper development of the sporogenous tissue, it is basically of 2 types. One is the secretory or the glandular tapetum, and the other is the amoeboid tapetum. The secretory or glandular tapetal cells secrete sporopollenin. Sporopollenin forms the outer wall of the pollen grains and is the major factor why pollen grains can survive outer conditions like desiccations or the wind or frictions. It is because of this sporopollenin that animals can eat the pollen grains. It will face the acid inside their stomach and still come out intact. They secrete sporopollenin, pollenkit and compatibility proteins. Compatibility proteins are those proteins which help they are present on the outer side of the pollen grain. They are present on the exine, and they help to recognize whether this pollen grain belongs to this female reproductive part or not. So for example, a wheat pollen grain won't be able to fertilize a rice ovary. Okay? That is because of these compatibility proteins. They recognize which plant or which flower the pollen grain should fertilize. These secretory or glandular tapetal cells provide U-bisque bodies which help in the ornamentation of exine. They help in the ornamentation of exine. These U-bisque bodies, they are present inside. They are round structures present inside these tapetal cells which secrete or deposit sporopollenin onto the exine of pollen grain. Amoeboid tapetal cells, however, have a little bit different function. They undergo breakdown. The cell wall of the tapetal cell breaks and the entire protoplast moves towards the center. The entire protoplast will move from the tapetal cell by breaking the cell wall to the center, that is towards the sporogenous tissue, in order to nourish the microspores. Then is the sporogenous tissue. The sporogenous tissue is the central part of the microsporangium. each and every cell of the sporogenous tissue is diploid. It is called a microspore mother cell. Why it is called a microspore mother cell? Because each and every cell gives rise to microspores, or it is called a myocyte because it divides by meiosis to give rise to 4 microspores. Each and every cell in this sporogenous tissue is capable of giving rise to 4 microspores, that is from each sporogenous tissue cell, which we also call a microspore mother cell or a myocyte. By meiosis we can get to 4 microspores, and because the process is occurring is meiosis, so haploid microspores are formed from diploid sporogenous cells. So how exactly this happens? What is the process of microsporogenesis? The formation of haploid microspores from diploid microspore mother cells inside the pollen sac, that is the microsporangium, by meiotic division is called microsporogenesis. The haploid spores formed from a single microspore mother cell are arranged in the form of 4 cells, which we call the microspore tetrad. So suppose this is a cell of the sporogenous tissue. It will be dividing into 4 microspores. So basically 2 types of tetrads are formed in angiospermous plants. One is the tetrahedral or the simultaneous type of tetrad, and the other is the isobilateral or the successive type of tetrad. The tetrahedral type of tetrad is formed when first meiotic division is not followed by cytokinesis, that is, first time when the nucleus divided, no cell wall was formed, and without formation of cell wall, second meiotic division started. That is, first the nucleus divided into 2 nuclei, and then those 2 nuclei further divided into 2 nuclei in order to form 4 nuclei, after which the walls were formed, resulting in a tetrahedral structure. That is why it is called tetrahedral process or simultaneous process. In this case, you can see 3 microspores from one side and 1 microspore from the other side, because the third microspore is present in a different plane from 3 microspores. So from one side you can see 3 spores, and from the other side you can see 1 spore. In case of isobilateral or successive type of tetrad, which is common in monocots, tetrahedral or simultaneous process of microsporogenesis, it is common in dicots, whereas isobilateral or successive type of tetrad formation occurs in monocots, that is monocotyledonous plants, in which just after the first nuclear division cytokinesis takes place, cell wall is formed between the 2 nuclei, and after that these 2 nuclei further divide into 2 nuclei. Second meiotic division is taking place after the cell wall has been formed, whereas here the cell wall was not formed after the first meiotic division. It was only after the 4 nuclei were formed that the cell walls were formed. In this case, however, cell wall was formed immediately after the first nuclear division, and those 2 nuclei, they then divided to give rise to 4 microspores. All those 4 microspores are divisible, they are visible from same plane. So we have seen how each and every cell in this sporogenous tissue is a microspore mother cell. It gives rise to, this microspore mother cell gives rise to 4 microspores. These microspores are haploid because the process of division has occurred by meiosis. So the ploidy has halved. Though the microspore mother cell is diploid, the spores formed from the mother cell are haploid. However, the microspore is not the final pollen grain. It is not yet ready for release from the plant. Though microspores and pollen grain are both haploid, no change in ploidy takes place between these 2 structures. However, microspores are not ready for dispersal, whereas pollen grains are ready for dispersal and they can survive the extreme conditions outside the sporangium. The pollen grains represent the male gametophyte. That is, they are the structures which are carrying the male gametes. They are the structures inside which the male gametes are formed. So they are generally spherical structures which measure 25 to 50 micrometers in diameter, and they have a two-layered wall which is called sporoderm. Sporoderm consists of exine and intine. Exine is the hard outer layer which is made of sporopollenin, one of the most resistant materials ever known. It can withstand high temperature, it can withstand strong acids and alkali. No enzyme degrading sporopollenin has been known till date. This is the reason why pollen grains have been fossilized. Fossilized means they have been preserved for ages and ages because of this resistant material which is present in their outer wall, which is sporopollenin. The sporopollenin is so hard that they are very well protected from hazardous environment wherever they are pollinated by biotic agents or by abiotic agents. And it exhibits a fascinating array of patterns and designs which is of taxonomic importance. The sporopollenin present on the exine layer of pollen grain, it shows such patterns and designs which help to trace the origin of the plant, which help to trace the evolution of that plant. So it carries taxonomic importance. Pollen grains have minute apertures which are called germ pores where sporopollenin is absent. That is, if sporopollenin is such a hard material and it cannot be degraded, then how will the male gametes pass out through the sporopollenin and fertilize the female gamete? It is because at some places in the pollen grain wall sporopollenin is absent. Those points are called germ pores, and it is through these germ pores that the pollen tube it emerges and it enters the style and then the ovary, and then the process of double fertilization takes place. Intine is the inner wall which is thin and continuous, and it is made up of cellulose and pectin. These are normal materials present in most of the cell walls, so pectocellulosic cell wall is not that resistant. It is the exine material that is resistant. And then comes the cytoplasm of pollen grain, which is surrounded by the plasma membrane. So here in this diagram we can see how the microspore develops into the pollen grain. So microspore is present here, you can see. Now inside the microspore a large vacuole is formed which displaces the nucleus to one side. This nucleus which is displaced to one side now undergoes a mitotic division. Mitotic division means both the nuclei have received the same amount of genetic material. However, due to the formation of this large vacuole, cytoplasmic division is not even. That is, one of the cells which is formed by division will have a large amount of cytoplasm, whereas the other cell which is formed here near the periphery has very small negligible amount of cytoplasm, which means a larger cell is being formed and a smaller cell is being formed. This larger cell which is being formed is called the vegetative cell because it has no role in the formation of gametes or in fertilization, whereas this smaller cell which is being formed here is called the generative cell because it is this cell which will be generating the male gametes. So this generative cell has a wall of callose. It does not have the wall of a normal cellulotic material. It has the wall of a hard material called callose. This callose layer has a special function in isolating this generative cell from the vegetative cell in such a way that it is not influenced by the hormones or the nutrients present in the vegetative cell, so that proper formation of male gametes can take place. We should not go into further details. It's a quite advanced topic to be discussed at this point. So this callose material is formed. This callose is formed and it separates the vegetative cell and generative cell, and it also is deposited between this plasma membrane, and the generative cell is separated from there also. Finally, this callose layer will separate from the periphery of the microspore, and it will begin freely floating inside this microspore structure. So this floating generative cell now dissolves the callose layer which is present outside it. That is, the callose has been dissolved, and it is the generative cell nucleus present inside the vegetative cell. This vegetative cell nucleus is also called tube nucleus because it is through the germ pore. The first nucleus to emerge through the germ pore is the tube nucleus. First, the tube nucleus will be moving out via the pollen tube when the pollen tube emerges from the germ pore, and then that generative cell nucleus will be following. As the pollen tube progresses through the style of the female reproductive tissue, this generative cell nucleus will be dividing into two male gametes. These two male gametes will be formed, and these two male gametes will be fusing with one with the egg cell and the other with the central cell to result into double fertilization. You can see at some points here exine is absent, only intine is present. It is these areas which are called the germ pores and through which the pollen tube emerges and the whole process takes place. We can see the microspores division to form the final male gametophyte. The final male gametes is mitotic. Vegetative cell is bigger in size, it has abundant food reserve and large irregularly shaped nucleus, whereas generative cell is small and it floats in the cytoplasm of vegetative cell. It is spindle shaped with dense cytoplasm and nucleus. However, the cytoplasmic division might be it might not be regular. The two are not getting equal amount of cytoplasm, but the nuclear division was perfectly symmetrical. Both of them got equal amount of DNA in them. So in most of the plants, the shedding of pollen grains takes place at this two-celled stage. That is, when the pollen grain has reached this two-celled stage, the stomium, the line of dehiscence, it opens up, the anther dries up and it dehisces and it releases the pollen grains at this stage in 60% of angiosperms. However, in rest of them, the generative cell divides to form male gametes, and it is at the three-cell stage, two male gametes and one vegetative cell, the three-celled stage, that pollen grain is released. However, this case is rare. Okay. So we'll be discussing some additional features of pollen grains. Pollen grains of many species of plants, especially those species which are anemophilous, that is transmitted by wind. Those pollen grains cause severe allergies and bronchial afflictions in some people, leading to chronic respiratory disorders like asthma and bronchitis. So examples of plants causing pollen allergy are given: Parthenium, Gajar booty, we call it Gajar booty, carrot grass, which came to India as a contaminant with imported wheat, and it created havoc. It has been an uncontrollable weed till date. We have Amaranthus and Chenopodium. Then pollen products. Pollen grains are naturally rich in nutrients, and pollen consumption has been claimed to increase the performance of athletes and race horses. You can see some pollen products in the picture. So these pollen products, they are sold in the form of tablets and syrups, and they are widely available in the market. Okay. So pollen viability. What is pollen viability? Pollen viability is the period for which pollen grains retain the ability to germinate on landing on the stigma. That is, once the pollen grain has landed on stigma, the time period for which it will be retaining the ability to germinate. This, once the pollen grain has been released, some pollen grains lose their viability very early, like it is only 30 minutes for rice and wheat. But some pollen grains survive for several months in the environment, and then they reach the stigma and they move through the style to the ovary, and they will be perfectly viable in order to fertilize the ovum. So pollen viability is several months for Leguminosae, Rosaceae and Solanaceae. Leguminosae is the family of pea, Rosaceae, rose family, and Solanaceae, the family of potato, you can say. Pollen banks. So pollen grains, they are stored. They can be stored in liquid nitrogen. That is, they can be stored at freezing temperatures, minus 196 degrees centigrade, and those pollen grains can be stored for years and later used in plant breeding programs. This process is called cryopreservation. Cryo means this has been preserved at a very low temperature. So these cryopreserved pollen grains are later used in plant breeding programs, and those centers which store pollens in this way are called pollen banks.